Hello and welcome to another Pro Detailer podcast. And yet again, we have another celebrity guest with us, none other than Mr. John Clough. Say hello.
Hello.
And we're joined with Ian.
Hello.
And John is Advanced Detail. I'm sure everybody listening knows who he is. And if not, has seen one of his many lovely cars that have been at Waxlock over the years.
Yes.
And we have lots of stuff to talk about. We've been chatting before the podcast, haven't we?
Absolutely, yes.
And I think you arrived at about midday, and it's now about 2:00. So
time flies.
It does indeed when you're having fun. But we've released the cable ties, and we've got an idea of what we want to talk about. So first of all, let's just do a bit of background. Let's do an introduction. So who are you, and what do you do?
So my name's John Clough. I own Advanced Detail, and we started Advanced Detail in 2013, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, we were finesse detailing for about a year when I was doing it out of a garage, dusty garage.
And this is up in Leeds, isn't it?
This is in Leeds, yes. And it's just grown. You do your first 6 months in business and you think, let's see if we can get to a year, and then the next year, and then the next year, and before you know it, we're into 10 years. Yeah.
No, that's pretty cool. So before detailing, before all that thing, because now you are kind of in your, I'm going to say mid-40s to be safe.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually 35, but we'll discuss this off air.
Okay, fair enough. There's a gun here, by the way.
Yes.
So before, when you were kind of a young lad, and not that you aren't anymore, but before detailing stuff like that, when you were at school, what did you want to be? Do you want to be an astronaut, footballer?
Not really a direction. I knew I wanted to run my own business, but I didn't know how that would transpire, and not really into cars until I started work for a living and started working and got into cars through the people I worked with, really, that were all into. And
but your first car was quite an interesting car.
Yes, yeah, it was a Renault 5 GT Turbo.
As a first car,
a first car, 19 years old.
Bloody hell! It's an amazing that you're still alive, frankly, because a powerful car like that.
Yeah, there was some a few interesting moments in the wet with that car, and a few tales to close family members when I pranged it.
Can you remember what your insurance was on that when you were 19?
£800 third party fire and theft. It wasn't. It was actually going to cost £1,500 for an XR3i, which was the understudy that I was going to get because I didn't think I could afford to insure a GT Turbo.
I think my 1.4 gear was about £1,500.
Yeah, you had a fancy 1.4. I only had
electric windows.
Yeah. Ian and I had the same first car, but his was a fancy pants one, and mine had wind-up windows, and it was a 1.3 engine with about 50 horsepower.
There's also a chance that you're still on the road.
No, I got confirmation it had been scrapped due to rust.
Oh, okay.
But it's not as dead as yours.
I sent you a photo of my one the other day.
Yes. All 7 pixels of it due to the time period.
Yes.
Like
roof in the wrong place.
Yeah. So tell us how you got into detailing, because this is a brilliant story.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, before detailing was detailing, I used to wash cars for my dad, and every time I washed the car, he'd come out and say, "Oh, wow, it looks great," and it's kind of addictive because you want to make it better every time then for that reaction. And
like me, then always looking for your dad's approval and
yeah,
never quite getting there.
My dad, your dad. But and it got kind of addictive, and then of course his car fell by the wayside when I came of age and got my first car, and that was the But I've always had that OCD thing where you're looking for improvement all the time, especially with the cars, and then with the GT Turbo, obviously, and they used to get polished on the drive at my mum's, and used to get the engine bay taken apart, all the chrome polished and silicon hoses off, and cleaned in the sink after the Sunday dinner.
So when was the first car that you kind of professionally did? How did you get into the kind of commercial detailing side?
Well, I thought I kind of like this, polishing cars and making them look pretty. Maybe I should go try and get a job as a valeter. Detailing wasn't a buzzword then. Nobody knew what it was really. Maybe it didn't even exist in the States back in 1997, 98, but
no,
as detailing. I took my car to a local Renault dealer, and spoke to the head valeter and said, look, have you got any jobs going? I'd be interested in doing this for a living. I've brought my car. I've just done it. Have a look at it, see what you think. He took one look at the Renault and went, yeah, when can you start? And I said, well, let's talk about wages. And as it turns out, that 2 days wasn't an acceptable length of time
Strange enough.
to do contract valeting. And so, that fell by the wayside. But I've always had this thing where that would be my ideal job, is to do the in-depth car cleaning. And I didn't know how that had transpose. And then leading on, I bought a Renault Megane.
The yellow one.
The yellow one, the liquid yellow R26. And I think that was 2010. And of course, on all the forums, and everybody's having the car or detailing the cars. Saw Russ Aston's work, saw a few before and afters of the machine polishing, and went, holy shit, this is interesting. This is amazing. And so I started following him. Obviously, I had Paul Dalton in the back of my mind. I'd seen him on Fifth Gear.
Yes.
And started following his work as well, and Detailing World. And then it all just...
It's all these old ones. Yeah, because you've got Russ's Midland Car Care. And then you've got, obviously, Paul Dalton, Miracle Detail. There's a kind of this, I wouldn't call it a brotherhood so much, but a kind of the founding fathers of the modern detailing kind of world, if you like.
It's seeing what could be done when you've not seen it before, and people get enthralled by it, especially if they're into cars and into like getting a perfect finish and the car's looking nice. And it's just something that snowballed, and ended up going on a machine polishing course with Gordon Muir from Defined Details.
Yeah, up Glasgow way.
He's the mad scientist that nobody's ever heard of.
Oh, I don't this. He is one of those founding fathers. I don't think he's the kind of the founding father, or the founding grandfather. Can we say that?
You can if you want. Your funeral.
It's funny. Gordon is a very, very shy.
Yes,
the guy. He's
not
very
extrovert.
quiet. No. He's very, very quiet and very unassuming. And we did a machine polishing course with him. It was a group day, group 2 day. 2 days. I think
he was one of the first who started kind of weekend sessions for people to come in, and it was all on Detailing World. Kind of started that fraternity.
Yeah, that's how I found out about it. It was on Detailing World. I booked. It was in Leeds, and that was the start. I thought I'd buy a machine polisher, and that was probably 2011, 2012, 2011.
What was your first machine polisher?
It was a Dodo Juice Spin Doctor.
The rotary.
The digital or the thumb wheel?
Oh, no, the thumb wheel.
Thumb wheel,
Analog all the way. Digital.
I still don't acknowledge the existence of Channel 5.
Channel what?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, for ages, Dom didn't like selling people the thumb wheel version because a lot of basically amateurs were picking these up and burning through their paint. So he was pushing lots and lots of people onto the digital versions.
What's the difference? Does the digital do it for you? Or?
Yeah, well, you just have a step up in sort of 6 and it just automatically controls it. But it's like just starting a thumb wheel and going, whee!
No, that's the fun part. I still do that.
Yeah. So the first business was Finesse Detailing.
Yeah, we started a business. It was the most difficult thing, finding a business name. And so we found that Finesse was the closest thing that I kind of liked.
I wonder what inspired you. I mean, Auto Finesse was around by then. I mean, Auto Finesse apparently has been around for 150 years or something, but...
collectively.
Yeah. But I'm trying to think of, because Finesse is now quite a popular name for detailing company.
There's a guy that's, I know a guy that wax stock, and he's always got his Finesse Detailing. I think, I remember the days. I had that, but we decided to rebrand. I mean, I was doing it out of a garage, and it was okay as a starter, doing that for about a year, and that's really cutting my teeth in machine polishing and doing a car in a day, which was hard bloody work.
Yeah, hard graft. Yeah.
And but that basically, the money that I earned doing that paid for better machinery, cameras, products, Well,
it's the experience. That's probably the most valuable thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so valuable. That first year and a half is critical when you start detailing in terms of what you learn, because I'm a massive advocate of training, and I got trained right from the get-go with a machine polisher because I didn't want to chance it. And just all through when I've felt like I needed more training, I've contacted the relevant people that I'm interested in, see their work and think, wow, I want to do what he does. And
because you trained with Kelly Harris as well.
Who?
Yeah, he's a bloke down in Kent.
I think I've heard of him. Yeah.
No, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but yeah, I did some. I did.
That's an in-joke, by the way.
Yes. So 2012, I spent I think it was 3 days with Kelly 1-to-1.
God, he must have been middle-aged at that point.
He was. Yeah,
I can hear his teeth grinding from here.
He dropped his walking stick. So.
I'm
just reading off the script here, Kelly. I'm sorry. It's what John told me to tell him, something about 50p.
Yeah, whatever.
But again, starting straight off with the training route, it's always been something I'd advocate for, because it knocks years off of your development stage, if you like. 'Cause you have that learning curve, don't you, where if you don't have training, it's a very steady one, and it also drops off when you realise actually you need a lot more knowledge than you can just pick up.
Yeah, I mean, we do training courses as advanced detail, and there's various courses we do, like from a 2-hour machine polish starter course right through to a master course where we actually get a vehicle in, and that's their vehicle for the week to work on under our supervision, and then they get to hand that vehicle back to a client at the end as their work. So it's a course that encompasses everything, but that sort of training, we call it a fast track course into detailing, because we're teaching them things that we've learned over the 10 years.
We're teaching them the mistakes they're going to make.
Teaching them the mistakes, and we have a jolly good laugh about them as well, because there's been some belters. I mean, that weren't particularly funny at the time.
Hindsight's wonderful.
It's very risky training on customer cars.
Yeah, well, pretty damn stressful, to be fair.
Yeah.
But then you look and you can laugh about it after, and you think, well, that was a learning experience. But if someone can learn from that, who I'm training, then they're getting something out of it, and they're actually a lot less likely to make that mistake. But something we do actually in the training is we do get them to mess things up. And so
not on the customer car.
Not the customer car, no. But on test panels and things like that. And we, ceramic coatings is a good one, where we put some ceramic coating on a panel, but don't take it off. And
so you got the high spots.
Yeah. Now deal with that after 30 seconds. Now deal with it after a minute. And it's a different kettle of fish. And the sandpaper's out. But it's something that really, especially the Kelly course, it really fast tracked me into detailing, but again, Gordon, very, very, very good at what he does. I had a conversation with Gordon. The first time was applying a ceramic coating to a car, and I said, right, how do I apply this stuff? I was obviously nervous. And
was he car pro at the time?
Car pro, yeah. And it was the Car Pro one.
C-Quartz UK.
C-Quartz, that's the one, yeah. And he told me, you need to do it this way because it's got this, this, and that in it that'll react with this, this, and that when it comes into contact with air. And it's like, Gordon, I don't need to know this. I just need to know how to apply the bloody stuff. But he sits and he reads the data sheets and he figures out what's in it. And then from there on, he goes and he figures out the best way to use the product, which is unbelievable.
But it's essential. And this is something that I'm a big believer in. First of all, is I always struggle with the kind of the master course, because you do obviously a master course, Kelly does master course and all the rest of it. But the idea of then coming out as a master detailer after 5 days of training is always a tricky one, because it's the experience is key. It's that balance.
It's a buzzword. It's just like detailer.
Yeah.
And it's the master course because it's the most comprehensive course we offer. It doesn't mean they're a master detailer when they've completed the course. That's entirely up to them.
Exactly. You've got to leave it in their court, I guess.
It's how far do they want to take it from there. It's giving them the knowledge, it's giving them the platform to take it potentially a long way.
Yeah, I think one of the really important things, and it's the difference between certain types of detail, and we'll come on to this because we've kind of classified detailers a little bit later on, but the importance of not just knowing how to do something, but why you're doing something. Bring, your point about Gordon reading the data sheets. I mean, they're enthralling. There's no sex or car chases that I've identified so far, but I live in hope.
Yeah, you're reading the wrong ones.
I'll revisit the CarPro one. But it is just that, and that's something that we do from the magazine point of view. Is it's all very well saying, you add this, say, fallout remover, and how it changes color. That's people just say, oh, it changes color. Well, we, from our point of view, we then look in why chemically and all the rest of it. And now we've identified the ones that, for example, will change color without actually being in contact with iron. And it gives you a kind of a more holistic understanding of things, I guess is the way of putting it. But anyway, we digress. So we are, you've done your training with Kelly, you're kind of set up and you're running. And then 2013, what happens in 2013?
So basically, I was working at Royal Mail as a postman, and I just thought I kind of like doing this detailing thing, and started looking around for units, because I'd obviously seen Rosastin take those steps, and sort of kind of followed the flock really, and thought, well, if he can do it, maybe I'll give it a go. And obviously the business thing, I was wanting to run a business in the back of my head, and I thought, well, maybe this is it. And polishing cars, they go hand in hand. This is something that could potentially work. And got a unit under a railway arch. It wasn't a massive unit; it was about 500 square foot.
Sounds like full of character, though.
It was. Yeah, it's very damp and very miserable and cold. But it's
it is in Leeds. I mean, what do you expect?
Well, it's not sunny down south. But yeah, I still have very fond memories of that unit. And when I look back, there's still loads of pictures that I need to post on my social media of the last couple of cars that we did there that I've not got round to yet. Even though it's been 5-6 years.
Yeah.
So, it was a very, very good platform, and you learn a lot in those first. When you've got a unit, you've got then responsibilities to
exactly. You're learning about business just as much as you are detailing.
You are, and the funding obviously was courtesy of Royal Mail partly, and courtesy of the cars we were doing, because you're never busy when you start. Usually,
it's a good way in though. I think I always worry when people say, right, I've quit my job, I've done everything, and now I'm going headlong into detailing, and it's kind of on the one hand it's great, but on the other hand, I know a lot of old school detailers who have been around for say 5-10 years, and they almost all started doing had a day job of some description.
It's a bizarre parallel through most detailers, but I think that's why a lot do get on and have empathy for people that are. Or sympathy, is that the word? For people
they're similar things, but I mean, for example, so from a PVD point of view, is that in the early days we had no requirement to be full time because there were so many decent detailers who were doing it weekends, and it gets the backup of people who are full time because they're like, oh well, he can afford to charge lower prices because he's got a day job, or all of these things. And I never thought it was quite fair. And now the policy has to be a primary occupation. But I think you want to help those people in those early days to get and develop to the point where they can jack in the job working for Tesco's or Royal Mail or whoever it is.
I've had so much help from and advice from other detailers and encouragement as well. And I mean, there's obviously some that don't offer that.
Yes,
but that's an individual thing. And but and I think, well, if I can encourage somebody, or if I can give the right advice to somebody to start and say, well, it's not easy and it's not the best or most glamorous thing polishing a Fiesta at 3 o'clock in the morning.
It's a certain look, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, Ian. We're just discussing previous cars, and Ian happened to mention a Fiesta. That was the first thing that came into my mind.
I mentioned the Fiesta just because they announced that they're no longer making it.
Yeah.
Which I was a little bit sad about for a moment, and then I realised that pretty shit cars.
You're not bothered now, are you? I got over it.
Well, hang on. A couple of points of information. They're not crappy cars. They're
modern ones are
awesome. No, well, modernish. I know later one, which I love.
The Mark IV, you couldn't actually see anything that was coming slightly at an angle towards you because there was a massive A pillar in the way.
It keeps life exciting. And you said you never polished yours. I have it on good information that you did polish yours by turning it on its roof and sliding along the road.
Yeah, so, it was going along and pasting the turtle wax on the road in front of me first. That took planning and time.
I would class that as more sanding than polishing, to be fair.
The abrasive was quite aggressive.
Yeah.
And in fairness, you're only there for half the journey. The rest of it, you decided to exit left out the windscreen and let the car do its thing on its own.
Well, I had to get a wider angle shot.
It's all for the Instagrams. Of course, it didn't exist in those 80s days. But and now you're in a different unit from Under the Arches.
Yeah. We moved out of that one. So we did 5 years at that one. It got me through a lot of concentrating on that business, because it got me through a lot of difficult times and a lot of mental health problems and personal issues back in 2013.
It was fascinating. You said, so mental health is the thing that we try and talk about, and we try and, it's
quite a bloke thing now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I say that. I think blokes don't talk about their feelings as much for whatever reason. But what I really liked is how you said that it was actually detailing that got you through.
Yeah, it was. I'd committed to the unit, and we're getting cars in dribs and drabs, and obviously funding it from my other job. And I was thinking, well, I need to do this job, and I didn't feel like doing it, but I did it and forced myself to do it. And that got me through, because one after another, and then you're 2-3 years down the line and it's so far behind you.
Gives you a focus.
It does, yeah. And having that focus, and not so much forgetting the problems, but dealing with them in your own time, rather than, and having something. It's a great anchor, I found, to hang on to when you're in those times of trouble, that you really struggle to I don't know what the expression is. You're really struggling to carry on with just day-to-day life, and having that focus, and having that, well, he's paying me X amount of money, so I've got to do this, and it's got to be at a good standard. And it's the clients.
Yeah, it's a motivator, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're paying, and that, even to this day, you look at the cars we're getting, and the average spend is between £1,200 and £1,500 now for the detailing, and then going to the PPF, which is even more. Yeah. And I look and think, Christ, they're paying a lot of money for this. It's got to be good. Yeah. And I never think my work's that good, but obviously they say different and keep coming to me. So I suppose
it's a self-esteem thing. I mean, for me, I would struggle quite a while back with it, and it was to do with kind of feeling like you're kind of not economically viable, but like a justifiable human being, and not just a waste of space. And being able to do things and generate. It's not just to generate the money, but adding value to the kind of the world as a wider thing. You know. And actually, it was kind of 2011, 2012, starting the whole PVD thing, where I wanted to actually start something and there to be, kind of a tangible benefit adding thing. Having previously worked in IT, and you really don't feel that you make a difference in IT. You're just a bod.
So a lot of numbers, isn't it? And,
and it's also virtual. That there's literally nothing tangible. And it's bizarre. But so detailing as not a diversion, but as a guiding thing and a motivating thing.
Yeah, it was an anchor.
That's a great phrase
to hang on to, and it was it worked really well for both my mental health and the business. Obviously,
you put the energy into it.
Put the energy, the time, and the effort, and obviously loving what you do and loving the job is a massive help. Not so much when you're at 3 o'clock in the morning and thinking, oh, blimey, where's that 14 hours gone? I should go home, really. But I think every detailer out there that's done the graft has done that at some point in their lives. And in 2017 we got the bigger unit, where we actually built a unit inside a unit.
As you do, standard.
As you do, yeah.
This is way too big. I'll just build a smaller one and pay full rent.
Russian dolls.
Yeah.
But it was just, we could put the lighting in the walls that we could never do in the old, because of the constraints with what we could do with the landlords and what we couldn't do and everything. And so that was a game changer. And now everybody's got lighting in the walls.
Yeah.
But fantastic. And great platform to move on and move the business forward. Really.
Yeah, I mean, now you've got employee. You're I'm not going to say moving up, because you're well up there already, but you kind of it's progressing nicely.
There's always progress to be made. It's always the next. We're designing the next studio in my head as I'm building this studio that we're in now. It's bizarre.
Yeah, well, they're never finished, are they?
No.
And actually, speaking of development, we first met Waxstock many years ago.
Yes,
and you and I have there aren't many of us around who've been to every single Waxstock.
I think, I think I've attended every single one. It's Waxstock's such a great event. And I knew that from the get-go, because it's just focused on the prep and the finish that goes on with the cars. It's nothing to do with having air ride or scissor doors or fancy paint. It's just all about the cleanliness of the car. And I mean, back in 2012, the standards are completely different now to what they were in 2012. But some of the guys that are competing now, like this last year that's just gone, where I took the GT Turbo, to the standards are just incredible. I mean, one of the guys that was judging the top 16 said that 5 of mine should have been in there. But I've spent 5 years doing that. Now, some of these cars that are showing in the top 16 are people's daily drivers.
Yeah.
And you think,
how?
Yeah. How can you keep it like that? How can you get it like that in the first place when it's a daily driver? And it's taken 5 years to build that car of mine.
Well, I know people now are already talking. I've already seen one post about prepping already for Waxstock next year, which is just so you got to hand it to them on the dedication side of things.
Just see cars driving around covered in blue masking tape for most of the year. There's got to be a better way of doing this.
Well, speaking of stunning cars, so my memories of your cars at Waxstock are the Megane in lovely yellow.
Yes, yeah.
Your van, which won at least once. Twice, yeah. And of course, and this brings us on to the car that we're going to be talking about in the magazine, but it is your Renault 5 GT Turbo.
That old thing.
So, obviously, your first car was a GT Turbo, but it's not the same car.
It's not the same car. The first one was a red G-Reg, and then I had various other stuff, and then the Megane was the one that really got me going with the detailing and on the forums. So I kind of got that to thank for doing what I do now, I suppose. And that won Best Paint, I think. We've won 2 awards at Waxstock. One of them was Best Paint. I think it was 2014. And the Caddy van won, I think it was Best Works Vehicle. Yeah. In 2014, 2015, which was just blown away by, to be fair. It was, I couldn't believe it. But
so how did because you say you put 5 years into the white GT Turbo, how do you procure it?
Well, it was bought as a well, not a wreck, but it wasn't the best thing. And the idea was we were going to get it painted and then rebuild the engine as standard and just have some fun with it, drive it on the road. But of course, you start taking bits off and going, that's not good, and there shouldn't be a hole there.
I know that feeling. Yep.
I will say rust is lighter than carbon fibre.
It's all the air in it.
It just became something. Well, we got to a fork in the road where it was either we're going to have it roadworthy and use it, or we're going to rebuild it completely from the ground up, from a shell. And obviously took the hard route,
the red pill,
yes, and regretted it many times since then. The bank account certainly regretted it.
Yes, but your level of the attention to detail on it is amazing. You were ceramic coating the inside of the door skins from memory.
Yeah, the fives aren't the best known for being resilient to water, and so I thought, well, I want to give it its best fighting chance, and it's we get asked this as a company all the time, is how good can you make a car? And they come in and see a silver or gold detail and are quite astounded and go, well, actually, there's the answer sat there. You take a 33-year-old car and you do what we've done with it there. I would never do it again.
No.
I couldn't afford more hair loss, to be fair. But, just how crazy can you make it? Well, we can coat that paintwork, we can coat that, and the next minute all the under the carpets are coated, and
how many litres of G-Technic did you use on it?
A lot of spare bottles that were hanging around that are all empty now. So,
because it wasn't just a case of you replacing parts as they fell off in the
light breeze.
Yeah, the light breeze. You're actually taking things apart, cleaning them, restoring them as part of it, weren't you?
Yeah. I did make the mistake of trying to take a seatbelt apart, which didn't end well. Nearly took my face off with the spring inside.
Well, it reminded me, we've covered a detail which was Afagula, who's now NBN, but before he was running another company that I can't remember what the name was, but he had a Skyline R32, which is one of my all-time favourite cars, and he was literally replacing bolts on the engine because the bolts were slightly rusty. So it's like, no, I'll change the whole bolt for it.
Well, that's what I mean. We tried to save with that car. We've tried to keep it as original as possible as far as the parts that have come off the car, that we took off the car. So things have been blasted, zinc plated, nuts, bolts, things like that. Then it gets to the body panels, and the metal on them is so thin you could actually use them as a kite. They are
It's a sail,
very flimsy, yeah. and there's only so much you can do with something like that. And we've been lucky enough to source quite a lot of panels that are new old stock that have been in people's attics and things like that. And so obviously those have got replaced. All the drivetrain is pretty much brand new, newly built engine, gearbox, the brakes, everything. All the important oily spinny bits are all...
The oily spinny bits. I can see you're a mechanic.
Yeah. I was about to say, if your brakes are oily, then it's a bigger problem.
Then you will be doing some spinning.
They never go rusty, though.
Which is the important thing with brakes.
Yeah. But, it's been a ground-up, nut and bolt, proper restoration.
And by the sounds of it, given that I know yesterday you were hunting down some extra parts and stuff for it, and the boot of your rather fancy pants BMW is full of bits of Renault.
Yes.
Tell us about this place you went.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah, GT Turbo Spares, just down the road.
What do they do?
From here? Oh, well, Skylines, funnily enough. No, we've spent a lot of money with those guys, and he's got a lot of GT Turbos in various states of disrepair.
Yeah, how many did you say were in a field?
Around about 80, 86, something like that.
That's ridiculous. I didn't even know there were 86 in existence anymore.
Well, I didn't.
Technically, there's not.
It's like, how many people can you get in a phone box? It's ridiculous. But
if you use a wood chipper, quite a few.
Well, that's true. Yeah. He's been the main man really for the parts, and I mean a lot of the things that we've been getting have been used parts, but good used parts. But we've obviously had them blasted and powder coated or zinced and what have you to make them look brand new. So it's not how it would look out of the factory at Renault, it's how good can we make it.
It's how it should have looked.
But
didn't, because
Renault, but it's how extreme can we make it. But it does get used though.
Yeah, you were saying you blast up and down the Dales and you head up to 190 miles an hour on the M62 or something like that.
I'm sure he said 200.
I thought maybe it was 200. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
It's fine.
They're now baking me a cake with a file in it to get out of prison.
You'll be fine in prison, honestly. But the other interesting thing, so you're still working on that one, but you saying that you're already musing about potential future things, and
did you have to go there?
Well, you sent me a picture of a very sexy French saloon car that I admire. I would never want to own.
Well, yeah, I'm starting to think I would never want to own after speaking to another owner that's in Ireland. Asking what's the part situation like. So in this field, I can't really say too much, obviously, because he likes to keep the location secret and what he's got. But there was a 21 turbo quadra, so it's a 4-wheel drive, full leather, and just sat there looking very sorry for itself, with various trees and growing out of it. And
well, the picture you sent was late last night. You said something along the lines of, "Better not drink any more wine, otherwise this is going to be mine." Something of that line.
Yeah. Be going bankrupt if I go on eBay tonight. So, but yeah, it's a consideration. It's looking at the car. It was so straight, and it was like, well, that's better than the GT Turbo was, but don't really want to take on another French car that's got a really serious part situation, because the GT Turbos, as rare as they are, parts are still in abundance compared to the 21 turbos. And so it would be a difficult thing to do. But one of the other things that, and you might like this because you've mentioned Peugeot already.
Yeah.
One of the other things we've been looking into at the moment.
Please say GTI 6.
No.
MI16 405.
You've got some of the numbers right. It's something very, very rare. Something very, very fast.
309 GTI?
No. Think 80s rallying.
Oh, a Maxi. No?
Peugeot.
Not the sort of Paris-Dakar or Pikes Peak style 405.
Getting very warm. Come on, I'm testing your knowledge here.
Is it the one with the engine in the middle?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember the name of it. I can picture it. It's in my head.
205 T16.
Ah, T16. Okay.
And so we've got several friends that own Group B cars, and we've had various discussions, and quite a few of them have built actually replicas, which mine, if I decided to go down that route, would be. But we would do it only if we could do it like we've done the GT Turbo and the level of detail, and so it would look like an actual factory car.
Will it be worth a fair bit more money then? I mean, with a 21, it's a very niche car.
It is, yeah, it is. I mean, potentially the return. I mean, I sound like a car dealer here, which I'm not. But ultimately, you're looking for something. You're looking for something that you've got an exit point with, and it doesn't leave you by the side of the road absolutely penniless.
Yeah, I can't offer any advice there. I'm into Subarus. It's a one-way street there. It's just destitution and sadness. Well, lots of interesting stuff. We are going to take a little pause, and when we come back, we've got some more topics to talk about, and we're looking forward to it already.
Yes.
Enjoying the Pro Detailer Magazine podcast. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about two very cool gifts that we have that you can give to people at Christmas if you like them. The first, the car detailing set, is hand wash only, the hardback book, all 144 pages. Born to be Mild, one of our all-time favourite shampoos from Dodo Juice, and a wash mitt with Noodle on one side and gauze on the other for glass. That is $19.99, but for people you actually really like and want to spend a little bit more on, $28.99 gets you the hand wash only book, the Born to be Mild shampoo, the wash mitt, Cabin Krug, an interior detailer, as well as Clearly Menthol, a glass cleaner from Dodo Juice, really good one. Anyhow, it also has a microfiber and a back issue from the Pro Detailer Magazine portfolio, all available on our website, prodetailermagazine.com. Anyway, back to the podcast. And we're back. We're here with John Clough of Advanced Detail.
Hello.
And we're kind of more looking at a kind of a business advice part of this podcast. It's just you've been running for over 10 years, and it kind of going through what you've learned in that time and the importance. And the first thing was that kind of came on there is planning for a rainy day, how you kind of manage the ebb and flow of customers and income.
Well, since taking on staff, you really got to have a rainy day fund, because obviously you're not just you can't go, well, I can afford not to pay myself this week because we've had a steady week. It's been a bit slow. You've got to have the money there to pay them, and so it's all about financial management. It's become more of an important thing to run it as a business rather than just like a hobby.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting distinction between the hobby detailer and the business detailer, and almost all people running a detailing business, I can think of some exceptions now, started off as a hobbyist detailer. Yeah, but it's that important change in mindset, and I see this so often with people coming into the industry, is that they think, I'm doing this because I really enjoy polishing cars. Fine. Yeah. But there's a difference between polishing your own on a Sunday afternoon and doing customer cars day in, day out, particularly when you're mobile in the weather.
It's an interesting thing you say that, to be fair, Bert, because I've got all my friends are into cars really, and I've got a friend that's got an M3 track car, and the back end's been through a barrier and it's been poorly repaired, but it's covered in swirls. And I went to see him the other day because I've not seen the car, and him and his buddy was putting some racing seats in it, and he said, "Oh, do you fancy polishing this, John?" I went, "Oh, yeah." And he said, "Have you got a machine?" "Yeah." "Have you got pads?" "Yeah." "Have you got a compound?" "Yeah." go on then, plug me in.
Yeah.
And they thought I was joking.
So I'm doing it yourself then?
Yeah, well, yeah, almost. But and because there was no money involved and there was no expectations, I was back to doing my own car before I first started actually doing it and it was great. I did polish a penis in his bonnet. But I did polish the rest of it then.
Did you use like a template or just
oh no, just straight out of it.
That's the noise mine makes. I don't know about you.
I can see you've got your gain turned up to max.
That's heavy.
It's from Trail's leg back up.
But there is, you're absolutely right. There is that kind of we do it because we love it, but then we all work full time in the industry one way or another, and actually it can seem a little bit like work.
It's I'm getting back to what we talked about in part one of the exchange of money when you do it, and it gets to a point where it gets awfully serious with the amount of money, and it becomes less enjoyable.
I hate talking about money when I'm talking to clients because I've gone through this list of everything that we can do for them, and they're really excited. And then you've got to go, but it's going to cost you this much, and at that point they're either fine or
I only have £10.
Yeah. What can we do with that? All the preparation? Can you just polish it without washing it first?
Do we have to have the penis in the bonnet?
Go faster, penis. Well, it's interesting.
They always go faster when I.
Oh, dearie me. No, it's all about managing expectations, though, isn't it? And I mean, it is. I always find it awkward, or I used to find it awkward talking about money. And when I used to tell people my prices, I used to say it through gritted teeth, and you automatically talk yourself out of that customer because they're looking at you.
You have to maintain eye contact to keep dominance.
Well, yeah, and yeah, in all walks of life.
I'm not going to do it again.
No, but you're talking them out of it in a way. Because
you want to be sure that the customer is fully on board with what you're doing, because if it's not, then he's going to end up disappointed.
Yeah. Well, you're going, it's going to cost 1,200 quid, and that because the way you're saying it, they're thinking, well, that's expensive, and why is he saying it like that?
So when you say, are you sure you want to spend it on that car?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, but I think it's like I say, it's getting back to managing expectations, and that's been a massive thing for us in detailing, and it certainly helps, and we always try to undersell and over deliver. Yeah, and there's been
which is great up to a point, but sometimes you do have to kind of check yourself and go, oh, hang on a minute, I've just given you $2,000 worth of work for 500 quid. Well, that's going to be expected. So
and part of it, I think, also is customer expectation and education. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So you have a customer who's seen a video on Tickety Talk or whatever it is, and they think that is what you're going to do because you're a detailer, and they think that their 60 quid valet or your 60 quid valet is going to, do all these amazing things for them.
When I first started, obviously you're looking at the competition and you're worried and going, oh God, well, I really need work because I'm really struggling here. I've got the rent to pay on the unit, and you want to be successful, and the work, it just doesn't come like that. And you've really got to work at it and get your portfolio and get known and get trusted, basically. And You get guys that are doing the same, what a customer would see, doing the same for 200 quid that you're spending, that you're charging £800 for. And they're going, well, what's the difference? And chances are that guy isn't your customer. If he doesn't see value in your £800 job, let the 200 quid guys do it, because he'll see the value in that then.
But the other problem with that is that you don't know, and you can't communicate to the customer what that other detailer's situation is. His dad might own the entire industrial estate and he's not paying any rent, or he could be doing it part-time, or he's got a redundancy settlement that's paying him out over time, so he doesn't need to earn as much, so he's building his business like that. So that it's in a very easy trap to fall into. Yeah, exactly. Comparing yourself to everyone around you, you've got to work out your own prices, what your business actually costs you, and what you can fairly charge to a customer.
I mean, one of the problem is obviously a customer is always looking for value, and I think there's a huge difference between cost and value, and explaining that to people is important. The problem I've seen in a couple of circumstances is, so there's a town in England, I'm not going to go any more detail than that, and there are to my knowledge, 4 detailers, and one of them is significantly cheaper than the others. Now, it's not actual quality, it's not time spent on car, there is no tangible huge difference between them, but as one, just as Ian sort of referred to, is he's working rent-free out of a family-owned unit. Now, it's all very well to explain to the customer, well, I've got rent to pay, but that doesn't actually give the customer any extra value. He might be going, well, they're cheaper. Sure, its overheads are down, but if the quality works the same. So there are lots of barriers, and I always feel that's really unfair when you've got that sort of competitive advantage in the market.
But is that sustainable and over time, and when it becomes not a family-owned?
Probably not, but he's probably, the business, he'll have retired by the time all that happens. So it is an unfair advantage, and life is unfair.
It's not a level playing field.
Exactly. But focusing the customer, those things aside, explaining to the customer the difference between cost and value. And as you say, is if you genuinely believe the value you are giving the customer and you present the price in such a way, they're much more likely to come to it. And if, you do get people, you spend half an hour explaining a service and it's a 600 quid service, something like that. And they turn around, they say they've only got 50 quid to spend, or they've seen it on the internet for 60 quid. As you say, they're not your customer. No. And you just got to be, I don't know, I noticed with a lot of the more established retailers such as yourself is that you kind of learn pretty quickly to root out the time wasters.
We let the website do all the talking and the pricing, and we've had many people say, "Oh, don't put pricing on." But that stops your phone ringing with the people that potentially could be time wasters, because they look on your website. Well, they've seen your works, to follow it on social media. They look at your website; it's nice and professional, and then you just basically. They look at the pricing and go, well, can we afford it? We can't afford that. We'll go somewhere else. And, the phone calls you get then are generally, 80% of them are genuine bookings straight away. Whereas before, when you didn't have the prices on there, they
need to ask the question.
The ratio is a lot lower then, because you're having to try and justify what you're actually charging. And all that time you're spending on the phone, then you're wasting the time with the car.
Yeah, it's interesting. A friend of mine runs a Subaru engine building company. Surprise, surprise, the people I
managed to mention Subaru twice now.
Oh, you wait. But entertaining. So what he does is build performance race engines. They're sort of.
How do you know him?
How do I? Because I can aspire. But obviously, building engines is an expensive business, and he has now said, right, there is £100 fee to get a quote.
Right. Yeah.
So if you go through it, that's fine. That comes off it. But because it takes him so long to figure out which pistons and what overbore you want and all of these different bits and bobs, he says that now you pay £100 straight off, and then we'll go through. I'll phone you up. We'll have a conversation about your build, and if you want to go ahead, great. If you don't, that's fine. But he says even on that, he'll spend 2 hours putting together the spec, and so he's only making 50 quid an hour doing that, and he's super skilled. He could be making 3 times that.
Yeah.
And he says it has been an absolute miracle for his business, because suddenly he's getting much more done. The people who are contacting him are serious.
Yeah.
And I've seen a couple of detailers do this, where as soon as you're talking about anything involving kind of correction work, they say is, right, come in for an assessment. The assessment costs you £50 or £100.
Yeah.
And it includes a wash, because obviously it's difficult to tell the condition of a filthy car. So they come in, they get a kind of a detailed wash, and it's put on the ramp, and they look at it, and then they talk about it. And he said, in terms of the number of inquiries, it's probably down 60%, 70%. But in terms of the closing,
the quality
is much higher. And he says life is so much easier, because he hates having spent half an hour with somebody and basically having to tell them to bugger off, or being told, getting abuse the other direction, saying you're way too expensive, you're a dreamer, usually by a lawyer who charges £300 a year to just recite a law book. What a load of bollocks that is. But anyway, my point being is pick your audience, target that audience, and then you're going to be doing much better.
There's just one other aspect to that, and that's the other end of the scale. And I've had it to me on occasion, I don't know, you may have, may not have, where you've underquoted and someone's gone away because you're too cheap.
Yeah.
You've misjudged them, as it were. You've not gone deep enough into the service. You've not accounted for enough. They've got a price in their head of maybe, this is going to cost me £3,500. You've come back with a £900 quote.
In late 2014, 2015, when we went G-Technic accredited, that Christmas, my business was in a critical condition in terms of, I've not got money to pay the rent here. And we did a special offer on I think it was an enhancement, and it was, I think it was 275, normally 315, and nobody bit. And he was like, God, what's going on here? Because that's a bargain. And they were getting the same, we weren't cutting corners, we were doing a proper job. And then that leads into going accredited with G-Technic, and the price increased. That was increasing from 315, which it normally be, to nearly 500 for something golf-sized. And you're thinking, well, how's that going to work? Because if they're not biting at that price, how are they going to pay the extra? And when we did charge the extra, the client base completely changed, and people were turning up. They weren't time wasters. They wanted the work doing. Every time the phone rang, it was another guy that was waiting with a £50 deposit, no questions asked. They wanted us to work on the car. And like I say, the dynamic completely changes of the client base when you're charging the right money for your service.
Yeah, I've had that over and over again. There have been some who, so part of the
OnlyFans again.
No, I can't get above 50p for that. Part of the accreditation for the PBD is that we actually look at the pricing and the service structure and make sure it's sustainable, because I don't want to spend the effort on somebody who's charging so little they're going to be out of business in 6 months. Yeah. And on quite a lot of them, I'm telling them, look, you need to put your prices up. They're like, oh, nobody's going to pay that. Nobody's going to pay that. And sometimes they don't, and they despair and fine, whatever. But quite often they do, and their business just improves dramatically.
It's a confidence thing, and I've been there a lot. And you look at the prices, and me as a person, I've never had that much money in terms of working a day-to-day job to actually pay for a car to be detailed. And even now, when I do what I do for a living, I don't really see value in it. But customers come and say, and that's probably a wrong thing to say in my profession.
Well, it's imposter syndrome.
Yeah, kind of. And but obviously they keep coming, they keep wanting to pay. They're giving us good reviews, and so you run with it and think, well, I suppose someone does see value in it, but I don't think I ever will because of where I've come from.
I was about to say, I think we need to put ourselves in customer shoes quite a bit, because to put it in perspective, for example, I know there are people close to my heart who spend, I think, 60 or 80 quid getting their nails done on a fairly regular basis.
They do look nice.
They do, thank you.
I was going to say, is it the dogs?
Feels like it sometimes. And I sit there and I think, I would never do that. I still get a bit bitchy if I have to pay more than £5 on a haircut, as you can probably tell. But there's another person in preparation for a wedding. They were getting their hair done. It was like 300 quid. And I'm sitting there thinking, who the hell spends that sort of money on a moving target like hair? It's entirely irrelevant. And
then the person who decides to get married.
Yeah, dicks. And then that's another in joke. But the point being is that we need to put them put ourselves in their shoes. Because again, buying a car, I'd see anyone who spends £250,000 on a Rolls Royce, and I'm thinking, there are people starving on the streets, and there you are flashing your cash. What a tit. I never spend more than £1,000 at any one time. It might be weekly, but at any one time on an old banger car that I normally drive. But it's where
values in the eye of the beholder.
Exactly that.
It's all relative. Oh, relative.
It is indeed.
Around here it is.
Yeah, relative to Swindon, it's not a good start. So the other thing I kind of wanted to look at is when you're running a business, getting to know. So I was talking to a new applicant, in fact, and he was explaining that he's only been going 6 months, but he's been amazed at the difference, because, for example, between school holidays and not school holidays, and how things you were talking earlier about slowing down towards Christmas. And now with new cars in the old days, we used to get tons of new car protections kind of September time and March time when the registrations came in. But because of macroeconomics, shall we say, without going into detail, COVID, the delivery of new cars seems to be consistently throughout the year. There are no surges. And so transferring these kind of macroeconomic factors and macro society factors into your own effectively little detailing business and being aware of things. And I talked to one guy not long ago, and he was in a right state. Business is very close on the edge, and you know what it's like. It's nerve-wracking, stressful. And he felt, I think, so much better, because when I was explaining why these things might be happening, he was like, oh, so it's not my fault. It's like, well, unless you invented COVID and the product shortage of all the microchips and all the rest of it, it's probably not your fault. Yeah. And that made him feel better. But then it's also thinking around the problem, thinking, okay, so this is the situation. How am I going to develop my business, adjust my business plan to suit for this? So you were saying earlier that around kind of Christmas time, you start saving in terms of when you're spending on machines and new kit and stuff. You do that.
Yeah. We're not as frivolous, shall I say?
What, a Yorkshireman being tight?
Oh, fly me. It's just a rumour.
So that was the side of it. And as you were saying, also there's the impact of responsibility of employees and rent and all of these overheads. And you've really got to, I don't know.
You've got to plan for it.
Yeah. And you've got to kind of put your grown-up shoes on. And
assume the worst.
Yeah. Assume the worst and think ahead and also plan it. And also what you spend out on. Because again, I see quite a lot of people cutting all their marketing budgets. People, obviously with PPF and stuff, you can spend quite a lot of money on Google.
Yeah.
And all the rest of it. And the first thing they do when things get tight is stop spending on advertising. And their complaint is we don't have enough customers.
Worst thing you can ever do.
Stupid. I'm not allowed to say that directly to their faces, so I just wobble on the phone. But again, is to think, okay, I need more people through the door, or I need higher spend per person, or what you need, and then coming up with that and coming up with a solution, and not shooting yourself in the foot by reducing. Do you
know what I think? I think attitude has a lot to do with it. And I know I've had a poor attitude towards business when I've been quiet and gone, oh, good, we're quiet. There's nothing coming through the door. What do we do? And
I've turned the lights on. What more do you want me to do?
Yeah. You just, and the problem is you're doing the same thing over and over again and not changing anything up, and that you're getting the same result. And I found we got a bit quiet because we were absolutely rushed off his feet a few months ago, and so it slowed the advertising down. And then you look in the diary and go, oh God, we need to start this again. Yeah, absolutely. And the more you focus on the things that are coming in rather than the things you don't have in, it just starts flowing again. And the tap stops dripping and starts running. Yeah. And so I think I've definitely for myself running the business and trying to get the work through the door, it is a lot of attitude, but then having a positive attitude, you do positive things, you look in a positive light, you're not stood about scratching your ass and going, oh God, it's not working, this is gonna fold ultimately. You're actually going out there and doing posts and advertising and promoting, and you're actually going out, you're going after it.
You're being proactive. Yeah. And it is slightly a blame game. I see people who will either blame themselves, think it's all their own fault, their mood goes down, everything goes down because they're unhappy about it. And then you get other people who will blame anything but themselves.
Everybody's fault but theirs.
Yeah, exactly. And I come across both types, and it's both very destructive, because there needs to be an element of, okay, looking at it rationally and saying, this is not my fault, but if I'm not going to do anything about it, it is my fault. Yeah. And your responsibility extends to your business, and that's it. And so working within that kind of bracket, it's interesting. And I fear with the cost of living and all that jazz that's coming along, recession.
There's a lot of noise. And I mean, I don't want to dismiss everything that's going on and all the bad things that are going on at the moment, like recession, as noise. But a good friend of mine, Andy Allen from A Plus Detailing in Ireland, he's one of my master pupils as well, and he's got a fantastic outlook, and he's just so focused on his business that all this noise, external noise about what's going on with the economy, it doesn't even register. It doesn't matter, because he's so focused, and the work keeps coming in because of that focus. And he's like you say, he's proactive, and he just does it automatically without thinking.
It can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's the thing. If you're worried about it, and then it's the recession on, I'm going to give up and become a greengrocer or something.
I think a lot of people see what's the headlines in the news, and they say, oh, there's an economy crash, everyone's going to have less money in their pockets. But you also have to kind of think, well, individuals' economies are a bit of a seesaw. So whilst one person's business may be going down, generally that's going to push someone else's business up and through the roof. So yeah,
like debt collectors,
or well, in my case, stove shops. Electricity's going through the roof. If you walk into any place that sells wood-burning stoves in the country right now, they are super flush, because I've got a 3.5 month waiting list to get one installed in my house.
It's a thing. I used to work for in IT, but they were AV, so they were selling big screens and all the equipment that you need. And they had two sides of the business. They had the sales business and the rental business. And when businesses were struggling and the recession was happening, the rental went through the roof. And then when people were flusher, they were buying. And so the buying side, it was a very well resilient company.
It's like houses.
It's a case of maybe you need to reassess your client base, go out and look in places that previously maybe weren't doing so well, and now they could be flush.
Yeah, undertakers, for example, they'll actually pay good money for that. but the God, that's a bit morose. That's the whole thing is to be aware of what's going on and think about it. And the other side, of course, is, I hate to say it, and I sound a bit lefty here, but the rich always somehow manage to stay rich. During the recession, the likes of Rolls-Royce were doing stunning business, and at the same time, the rest of us were, fighting on baked beans. So it's you look at who's doing okay.
They've got there with a certain knowledge and skill set, and they stay up there because of that knowledge and skill set. But then
that's a nice way of putting it. I mean,
it's bizarre because some of my friends that follow our social media, and they look at the cars we're doing, and they say, "Oh, we saw that XYZ that was like £500,000."
Have Tesla bought out a new car, have they?
Yeah. It's got Elon's Musk floating about in it. Yeah, pay extra money for that. They go, how the other half live. It's like, well, that's a really poor attitude towards it, because they've sweat and toiled, and most of them have, they're self-made, and they've not been born into it, and they've taken a step out onto the ledge. And a lot of our clientele, we have quite a lot of conversations with how they've got to where they are. I find it fascinating. And they're all humble people, and they say anybody can do it. It's just a mindset, and it's just having a focus on where you want to be and pushing through and keeping on going. And you find one way that doesn't work, you find another way that does.
Yeah.
And they generally recognise the amount of luck that's involved, being in the right place at the right time, talking to the right people. It's taking an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of an awkward conversation when someone's complaining about the circumstances, and you're thinking, well, you could actually change that.
Yeah, it's a lot. I see it, and you get a lot of jealousy within the detailing traders. It is quite often, and it's pretty foul, really. But the one thing is, he's had all the luck, and I sit there and think, yeah, luck's important, and I'm first to say luck's important. However, as a detailer, you make the luck. So I'll give you an example. There's a chappie up in the Northwest, and he does a lot of Ferraris. And talking to another detailer local, and he said, he's so lucky he's got that contract with all the Ferraris, a private collector. I was like, it's not luck, because he was up at 6 o'clock on Sunday mornings going to these Ferrari meet shows, talking to people. He got himself he's got all the kit and everything like that, and he's got these cars coming in, and he not only made the luck by being there and putting the effort in, but he spotted the opportunity. He talked to the person with the cars. He got the contract, and the job was done. The other bloke was probably just recovering from a hangover, having been out on a Saturday night. So it was not, it's not that he was lucky. He was hardworking. He spotted an opportunity and he went for it. So shut up.
we train people before, and I obviously follow them and follow what they do. And
sounds creepy.
Well, yeah. Plenty of court orders restraining.
What do you think those files are full of?
Well, yeah. Armed escort. And you follow them and you follow the work, and sometimes they'll pop up with a car that you've not done, and you think, you little bastard, I only trained you last year and you're doing something I've not done. But then you think, well, hats off. Good for you, good for you. And it's great to see that side of it. And
it is. And here, I don't often say nice things about the youth, because frankly, I'm quite scared of them. But young folk, like in their 20s, I've seen, members and non-members and all the rest of it are doing new and innovative ways of doing stuff. And it's, some of them it's working, some of them it's terrible. Some of them I'm just sitting there waiting for it to go all wrong, not in a kind of hopeful way, just in a kind of, oh Christ, that's a risky line to tread. And I've seen quite a lot of the older detailers be very snobby and unpleasant towards these young whippersnappers who say, "Oh, you can't do that. That's wrong."
But this isn't a new thing.
No,
it's been around.
We're just getting older and becoming that generation,
older and grumpier.
Yeah. But that's why I like to see the young detailers coming around. They are, on the one hand, you get the other old detailers. Oh, it's anybody can do it. Oh, it's market saturated. Oh, you're just stealing my work from me. But the other half is, these guys are doing really cool things.
We had a chap that commented. We had a Range Rover in. We had to. It had spent its life with a dog in the boot, not permanently, obviously.
So alive or dead?
I was about to say,
it makes a difference.
It takes about 11 hours if it's like winter.
Yeah, I couldn't. Have you timed it? I couldn't tell you really with the smell whether it was alive or dead, but I would think the latter.
It's details.
Yeah. Anyway, and we'd removed the dog hair using one of these rubber brushes that was about £2.99, and we got this obviously old valeter that popped up and goes, "Oh, that's a £2.95 item off wherever," referring to the tool we'd used to remove the hair, and it's like. And your point is...
Was it one of the blocks?
Yeah.
I only found this out the other day. They're made by a company called Jenny something, and she's based down in Stroud, and she sends out something like 200,000 a year from her garage.
Are these the green ones at Autosmart?
Autosmart do everything. Basically, literally down the road here.
Oh, we should go and pay.
Random fact. Anyway, on with the podcast.
You digress. I've always wanted to say that.
Sounds good in your digress.
It's just like your point is that, I've spent $2.95 on it, but it's the work that's going into it to remove them, and the client doesn't want to do that, and you're someone that does this for a living, criticising me that does something for a living when you should be concentrating on your business and let me concentrate on my business. I'm not selling to another detailer. I'm selling to the clients that aren't in the know.
Yeah.
I've just got an image of the client putting the rubber brush into his boot and just staring at it. Why are you not working? I put you in there. Just take the dog hair out.
Need to put batteries in it first, Ian.
Well, it's when they say, "Oh, your flash, you spent $2.95. You can just do it with your skin. Just do it this way," and then 2 days later,
it off.
Yeah. Oh dear, this trade is funny. So anyway, shall we do the 10 questions? Is it about that time?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the clock as if it makes a difference. Oh no, we're far too late.
Too late.
Speaking clock,
It'll have to be 8 questions. So
leave the Subaru one off at the end if you want.
It's midway through. It's an important question. I shan't leave it out. But yeah, that's fine. Well, look, I know where you live. So what is your current car? Your daily, shall we say, because I know you've got more than a couple.
Right. It's a BMW 6 Series Grand Coupe.
It's a very pretty car. I love it. And it's a 640D, so it's a pokey one.
It's a stunning car.
Yeah.
It's my first BMW, and going on that, it's certainly won't be my last.
Yeah.
It's superb.
I'm not a huge Beamer fan, but if I were to have a Beamer, actually, I've got a long list of Beamers I'd have. My God, I might actually be a closet Beamer fan.
I was thinking about this on the way down, best looking BMW. We're going on a tangent here already.
It's what John's got. It's a 6 Series. It's the 4-door 6 Series.
I think it's actually the Z4.
That's a good looking car.
But that's a different kettle of fish, though. That's something that your family can't go in.
Yeah, but just visually, I think the Z4 is probably the best looking BMW.
Yeah.
I quite like the Z8 and the one that was in Bond.
Yeah, it's not a good looking car.
Oh, I don't know. We just weird. We said a few a month or so back, and it's a pretty car. But I think
interior's nice too.
I think because you don't see many of them, it's got this golden glow around it.
Oh, actually no. So I might be thinking of the Z1. That's the one that has the doors that go under itself.
Oh, that's the Z. That is the Z1.
Yeah,
no, that is pig ugly.
No, I'm thinking of the Z.
But then there's a Z3M Coupe, which looks weird, but I quite like it.
Which one? The
red van one.
Yeah,
that is a cool looking car.
Yeah,
they're horrible to drive.
Yeah,
for me, I hated it.
Yeah, no, it's there are lots of things, but then like that Z1 with the silly doors and it's underpowered. It's only 2.5. Actually, it's modular. You can take it apart. It's got a space frame underneath. Technically, it's very clever. Visually, but anyway, so your current car is one of the few very good-looking BMWs.
Yes, that's why I bought it, because I love the look of it, and obviously then the drive of it and the way on the motorway it gets to 70 mile an hour is not more though.
Talking just 70,
just 70.
Yeah.
77 technically. Yeah.
Well, that'll be classed as speeding if you know you're doing 77.
You got the tolerance though. Although some places have taken it down from the 2% to 3%.
Exciting. Up to the minute.
2 miles an hour.
Well, I still remember when Clarkson and Co were in Australia, and it was on the Australian special, and they had the M6 version. I think it was the M6 version of the 4-door. It was lovely, lovely, lovely car. Anyway, what is your dream car?
Ooh,
money, no objects.
That's a tricky one.
Don't say a GT Turbo, surely.
No,
21
I'm a bit more aspirational than that. I think a car to look at would have to be, we did a Pagani Huayra in 2017.
Okay.
In fact, that was the one we had at Wax Stock.
Yeah.
and just to look at, you just open the clamshells and you just spend hours. And we spent hours working on that car, and every time you worked on it, you saw something new on it that you'd not seen before.
So Pagani is something that you'd like to go and see, like in a museum or something. Just go and look at them from every angle, inspect them. But it's just scared crapless to drive it anywhere.
It's part fighter jet and part work of art. They are incredible, and the detail that goes into them. I mean, we stood looking at that car, and you look at it, and as with all the clams shut, and you go, well, that's a £1.2 million car there, and you go, it's expensive. But then when you start looking into the details, just a bit. But when you start looking into the details and all the little bits and bats, and you think, how the hell have they done it for that sort of money?
It's back to the value question.
Yeah.
See, for me, Koenigsegg, Pagani rather, doesn't appeal because it is so. It's a vanity project almost. I know they did a Hawaii
it's not a nice car to drive.
No, but from my point of view, a similar thing. I love Koenigsegg's because they're not pretty, but they're technically
engineering.
Fancy cars. The Koenigsegg.
They've got impact, but the latest one with it's got a tiny wee engine that makes billions of horsepower, and it's got it doesn't even have valves or doesn't even have camshafts.
Have you
really
looked
clever
into what he's doing with? I think it's a Volvo he's got, and he's got. Is it electronic valves or something? Something really, really, something no one's done. Very, very clever man, Christian.
Yeah, Christian, what's his face? And the gearbox, it's got, you know how you got double clutch gearboxes? His has got something where it can select any gear up or down, and
that's just an all gearbox.
technically, but no, he's for me. If I was ever to be in such a flash car, which I wouldn't because poor, but
too tall
and too
abnormally.
Tall. Well, no, actually, Mr. Koenigsegg chappie, he's my size.
Is he?
I mean, he's a bit broader and more muscular and considerably more handsome and rich, but yeah, we're the same height.
But height-wise.
Height-wise, yeah. Height.
He's got less hair to worry about.
He does have less hair, or as I like to call it, less drag. I'm starting to come around to a pro ball situation.
He's grown too tall for his hair.
I thought you said a pro balls. That and the drag comment was starting to build some questions in my head.
As long as you don't put Queen in there, we're all safe.
Bless. Right. So I think I know the answer to this question. First car that you ever detailed, by the sounds of it, was your dad's car.
Well, it's not really detailing, is it? Just washing it. So, I mean, properly detailing it where we machine polish would have probably been... Are we talking in training, or are we talking as my own project?
I think as your own thing. The first car that you sit back and think, right, what's the first car that I kind of detailed properly?
Probably an Audi A3.
Okay, so fairly mundane, but...
Mazzano red.
Ooh, I've got an Audi A2 Mazzano red. Well, it was. Now it's
pretty colour.
Pretty
colour.
Oh, under light.
Yes.
Yep. But the lacquer fails.
Yes, that is stone chips galore, and that's it. No lacquer on the front bumper.
Yes, I have a £500 car that needs a £5,000 respray, and it's very, very annoying because I sit there just looking at the lacquer. You literally this hand-sized missing lacquer. It drives me potty. But every time the sun comes out, I'm like, if I just sell the dogs and go on the game for a year or two in Swindon, then I might be able to afford a deposit on the respray. Anyway, personal question, serious. How many buckets do you like to use?
Oh, now give me a minute. So wash, rinse, wheels.
Okay, so you're up to 3.
Yes. We have one of those fancy pad washing.
Yeah, the Lake Country ones. Yeah.
Yes, not a new one though. It's one of the old style ones.
The ones with the removable little dome thing on the top. Yeah. Who did those?
I thought it was Lake Country too.
No,
was it detail cards?
The red one.
Yeah, I think it is the Lake.
It is Lake Country. It's their 2000 rather than their...
Yeah, it is. Yeah. One of those that's gathering dust upstairs, and then we have one to catch the dripping tap water. So does that count?
Yeah, I suppose so. You're up to 5.
Roof,
yeah, 5 buckets.
One to catch my tears.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at 5 buckets. Another deeply personal question.
Yes.
Rotary or DA?
Ooh, now that is a question. On a day-to-day basis, we use DA.
Yep.
every time I pick up a rotary and we finish the GT Turbo down with a rotary, I'm like, where have you been all my life? I should really use
Why are
this
my hands
machine
not
more.
numb?
Yes, exactly. And I love the skill set of a rotary. I love the challenge. And with the problem with the DA, well, it's not really a problem. It is if you want to use your head when you're detailing, you switch off.
It's driving an automatic versus driving a manual.
It is, yeah. You don't have to think too much about what you're doing, and the machine's doing all the work for you, whereas the rotary is more of a skill set. But the feedback you get from the rotary. So if I was doing one more detail and it was going to be the final one, it would definitely be on rotary.
And when you find yourself using rotary, you're saying you pick it up to finish off cars. Are we really talking use it for dueling, or do you use it for the whole lot?
Finishing and dueling usually. But yeah, I just love the skill set, and there's just the smoothness.
It's kind of the art of it, isn't it? You're saying you're a musician. It's kind of like when you get all the chords right on a particular track, it's kind of satisfying.
Yeah, it's a more satisfying, it's more time consuming. It's not as efficient.
True, commercially speaking.
Yeah. So it's again, it's getting back to the business thing, isn't it?
Well, this is the basis of the next question. Do you prefer a coating or do you prefer a wax?
Right. I love the packaging on waxes. I love the look of them.
You part magpie.
Yes, pretty much.
It sounds like you're being polite. You introduced to a new person. Well, the shoes were nice.
Yeah.
The rest of them was a bit of a twat, but still nice shoes.
Plenty of those. Yeah, I love the packaging of waxes, but if it was my own vehicle, as they have on all of them, it's a ceramic every time. It's just easy to maintain. It's very, very durable, and we've looked into going accredited with a very well-known wax company, and it's just not financially viable because it'd fill my glass case full of lovely looking waxes that never get used. Yeah.
No, I hear you on that. Okay, fairly relevant question: Ferrari or Porsche?
Now. It would have to be a Ferrari because I'm not owned a Ferrari, but I have got a boxed Ferrari 60, which I'm very quietly in love with the way it drives. And I think eventually, if it does happen and I get into a Ferrari, I will end up back in a Porsche.
Okay. That's interesting. If you were to have a Ferrari, which Ferrari would you have? This isn't technically one of the questions.
Realistically speaking, in terms of what I would possibly be.
No, we're kind of back into dream territory. If you
dream territory, F50.
F50?
Yes.
That's interesting. Everybody always says F40, and I sit there thinking the F50 is not a pretty car, but it is a Formula One car with a body on, whereas the F40 is more like just a mad 80s turbo.
It's the one car that I had a poster of, and I remember it being on Top Gear.
Yes.
And they tested it against an F1 car. And I remember seeing the advert the day before that episode was aired. And it was when I'd really got into Ferrari. I got the Autocar book with all from the 125C all the way through. Yep. So I think it was the latest one at the time, 95, was the F512M.
Yep.
And looked all, and it had just been advertised. And I didn't sleep that night.
Wow.
I did not sleep that night, and I remember it, and I can still hear that car now.
It's the noise, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was it a V12?
V12, yeah. So it'd have to be an F50 because that was the poster car. But I do have a very soft spot for an F512M because technically
the last of the Testarossas.
Yeah, that was a car we worked on in '98, and that was the first Ferrari ever really. Well, I can't even call it detailing because it was again the Autoglim.
The first you touch with permission.
The first I touched with permission. Yes, they didn't have to wipe clean after. So.
I was going to make a girlfriend joke, but I can't now.
Sorry, mate.
Okay, most important question. Obviously, Subaru or Mitsubishi?
Now I've thought long and hard about this because I want to escape with my life.
Well, there is an element of that. Yeah.
Right. I've always been Mitsubishi. However, I have driven a few Evos with obviously the client's permission and sat next to me, and I've not been impressed with the way they drive. However, I've never driven a Subaru, so I would choose a Subaru in the hope that it would drive better than an Evo.
Well, I can. First things first. Firstly, obviously they do. unless you're on track, when an Evo might be a bit better. But then, frankly, if you want to drive a car yourself, you drive a Subaru.
Did you actually just say that?
I acknowledge the greatness of Evos purely because the Subaru's head and shoulders above. So, it's like saying my number 2's excellent, therefore the number 1 is awesome.
There's a forester sat outside now weeping hearing you say that.
No, it's just a leak.
It's just... Well, A, correct. B, it's a lifted Outback. And C, the second part of my answer to that was that when my Legacy is finally in a position where it's ready for track, which is an engine build away, as you know, there are 2 engines sat outside, well, 1.5 engines sat outside, and you're sitting behind numerous components in cardboard boxes for it. When that is ready, we shall go to somewhere like Coombe or come up near you, and we go around a track, and I shall make your dreams come true.
That'll be good. And we'll go on the track as well.
Hey.
I feel so cheap. Flex or repairs?
The reliability. Flex, please. Every time.
Fair enough. And again, I think I know the answer to this question. It is the final question of the 11 that we've had today. Sunday drive or Sunday detail?
Sunday drive, 100%.
Now, would you take so you have the GT Turbo, you've got the Boxster RSE thingamajiggles, you've got the 740, the 640D, you have got a Mini Cooper.
Yep.
Which do you take, and where do you take it? Or the Caddy? Yeah, well, Volkswagen. I've just alienated half our listenership, or Terry as we know him. But where because you live obviously near, so I used to work up near Wakefield, so I know the roads around there, and they're absolute gorgeous. Some of them, particularly if you head
into
west.
the Dales.
Yeah.
So
which of your cars and which road would you take them
on? Are we driving fast, or are we just enjoying the drive?
There's a difference.
Yes.
Okay, then I would say you're going for fun. So you not fast necessarily.
The GT Turbo.
Yeah.
The experience car.
Gotcha.
If we're going quick, the Porsche.
Yeah. No, it all makes a lot of sense. That all makes sense. Anyway, I think that draws us to the end of this lovely podcast. John, it has been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
And it's great to have your lovely Yorkshire tones coming down the lines. And off mic we've been talking lots about lots about Renault 5s and about stuff. So we're looking forward to things. And do remember to catch the next issue of the magazine, because you've bought your camera load of photos, which we're going to process and then spin into a nice article.
Fantastic.
In issue 16, be coming out in December. But for now,
we didn't mention that this is the last one of the current series.
It is as well. Tragic. Series 4. This is season 4.
Now we've got to bury ourselves in Brighter magazine.
Shipwrecks.
And it's good night from him.
Yes, I got to go and get some more painkillers from the back of mine. But anyway, John, it has been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.